Understanding LGBTQ plus matters. In a world growing increasingly interconnected, inclusive, and aware, understanding the nuances of the LGBTQ plus community is not just an act of allyship, it's a fundamental part of embracing the diversity of human experience. The LGBTQ plus acronym is often spoken, debated, celebrated, or even opposed. But what does it really mean? Who does it represent? And why has this community become such a central part of our social, cultural, and political conversations? To answer these questions, we must first go beyond the surface. LGBTQ+ is not just a label. It's a vast spectrum of identities, orientations, expressions, and lived realities. Each letter represents a distinct experience, and the plus serves as an open invitation to those still finding language for who they are. This deep dive will take you through the historical roots, evolving definitions, identities, systemic challenges, and cultural celebrations that make up the LGBTQ+ narrative. Whether you're part of the community, an ally, or someone trying to understand more, this journey begins with openness and ends with empowerment. Breaking down the acronym, what does LGBTQ+ mean? At its core, the LGBTQ+ acronym stands for L, lesbian, G, gay, B, bisexual, T, transgender, question queer or questioning, plus all other gender identities, sexual orientations, and expressions not explicitly included, such as intersex, asexual, pansexual, and more. Each of these letters holds its own unique story. Lesbian refers to women who are emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to other women. It's more than just a label. It's a self-affirming identity rooted in same-gender love and resistance against patriarchal norms. Gay typically refers to men who are attracted to other men, but it is also sometimes used as an umbrella term for anyone attracted to the same gender. Bisexual individuals are attracted to more than one gender. Not necessarily in equal measure, but with the capacity to form romantic or sexual connections across the gender spectrum. Transgender people have a gender identity that differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. Being trans is not dependent on medical transition. It's about the deeply personal truth of who someone knows themselves to be. Queer is a reclaimed slur that now symbolizes resistance, fluidity, and inclusivity. Many people use it to express identities that don't fit neatly into other categories. Questioning, meanwhile, reflects the journey of those still exploring their identity or orientation. The plus sign, plus, includes a wide array of identities: intersex, people born with both male and female biological traits; asexual, people who experience little to no sexual attraction; pansexual, those who are attracted to people regardless of gender; non-binary, gender fluid, and many more. Together, these identities form a mosaic of love, gender, and humanity, a history of resistance and resilience. Understanding LGBTQ+ lives today requires looking back at the past. The fight for recognition and rights has not been easy. In many cultures and historical periods, queer and gender-diverse people were revered, tolerated, or lived openly. Ancient texts, indigenous traditions, and archaeological evidence all reflect that queer existence is not modern, it's timeless. However, colonialism, religion, and patriarchal power systems imposed rigid binaries and heteronormative standards, criminalizing and erasing LGBTQ+ lives. In the 19th and 20th centuries, queerness was pathologized, seen as a disease or moral failing. The Stonewall Uprising of 1969 in New York City became a turning point. Led largely by trans women of color like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, queer people fought back against police brutality, demanding visibility and justice. From there, the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement was born. The 1980s and 1990s were marked by the AIDS crisis, which decimated communities, but also catalyzed political organizing. Groups like ACT UP forced the world to acknowledge the crisis and the worth of queer lives. Progress continued into the 2000s and 2010s with the decriminalization of homosexuality in many countries, legal same-sex marriage, and gender recognition policies. Yet the struggle is far from over, especially for trans people, queer people of color, and those in non-Western nations. Gender identity versus sexual orientation. One of the most misunderstood aspects of LGBTQ plus identities is the difference between gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. Gender identity: how someone understands and experiences their own gender, man, woman, both, neither, or somewhere in between. Gender expression: how a person presents their gender externally, through clothing, behavior, voice, or body language. Sexual orientation: who someone is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to. For example, a trans man may be straight, attracted to women, gay, attracted to men, bi, or pan. Being transgender is about who you are, while sexual orientation is about who you love. These layers intersect and influence each other, but they are not the same. Respecting this distinction is vital to understanding and supporting LGBTQ plus individuals. Coming out and the importance of visibility. Coming out is the process of recognizing, accepting, and sharing one's LGBTQ plus identity. It's deeply personal and often ongoing. People come out to themselves, then to others, in a world that often assumes heterosexuality and binary gender as the default. For some, coming out is liberating and joyful. For others, it's fraught with fear of rejection, discrimination, or violence. In hostile environments, staying closeted can be a necessary act of survival. Visibility matters. When LGBTQ plus people are seen, in families, media, workplaces, or politics, it humanizes them. It fosters empathy and reduces prejudice. But it must also be safe and consensual. No one should be forced to disclose their identity, and allies should never out someone without permission. Intersectionality in LGBTQ plus lives. The LGBTQ plus community is not monolithic. Race, class, religion, disability, geography, and immigration status all intersect with queerness in complex ways. A Black trans woman, for instance, may face racism, misogyny, transphobia, and economic exclusion, each compounding the other. Muslim LGBTQ plus individuals may navigate deep tensions between faith, family, and identity. Disabled queer people often find themselves excluded from both LGBTQ plus spaces and disability rights movements. Coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, intersectionality describes how multiple forms of oppression overlap. To fight for LGBTQ plus equality effectively, we must center the most marginalized and listen to diverse experiences within the community. Legal rights and ongoing struggles. In many parts of the world, LGBTQ plus people have made legal gains: marriage equality, anti-discrimination laws, adoption rights, and gender recognition policies. But elsewhere, same-sex relationships are criminalized, sometimes punishable by death. Trans people are denied healthcare or legal recognition. Conversion therapy, pseudoscientific practices to change orientation or gender, is still legal in many countries. Hate crimes and bullying remain rampant. Even where laws exist, enforcement is inconsistent. Cultural stigma, religious fundamentalism, and political scapegoating fuel systemic exclusion. LGBTQ plus asylum seekers, for example, often flee persecution only to face new dangers. Equality requires more than policy. It requires a transformation of culture, hearts, and minds. Legal rights and ongoing struggles. In many parts of the world, LGBTQ plus people have made legal gains: marriage equality, anti-discrimination laws, adoption rights, and gender recognition policies. But elsewhere, same-sex relationships are criminalized, sometimes punishable by death. Trans people are denied healthcare or legal recognition. Conversion therapy, pseudoscientific practices to change orientation or gender, is still legal in many countries. Hate crimes and bullying remain rampant. Even where laws exist, enforcement is inconsistent. Cultural stigma, religious fundamentalism, and political scapegoating fuel systemic exclusion. LGBTQ plus asylum seekers, for example, often flee persecution only to face new dangers. Equality requires more than policy. It requires a transformation of culture, hearts, and minds. Language, labels, and the right to define ourselves. Words shape reality. Language gives us the power to define ourselves and find community. That's why terms like non-binary, asexual, gender fluid, and pansexual have emerged not as trends, but as necessary tools of self-understanding. However, language also evolves. Labels can feel affirming to some, restrictive to others. Some people resist all labels, preferring fluidity and ambiguity. That's okay. Identity is not static, it can change over time, and no one should be policed for how they define themselves. Using the correct pronouns, names, and terms is not political correctness, it's basic respect. LGBTQ plus culture and pride. Queer culture is a vibrant tapestry of resistance, creativity, and survival. From drag and ballroom culture to literature, art, fashion, and music, LGBTQ plus people have always reshaped the world with flair and fire. Pride Month, typically held in June to honor the Stonewall riots, is both celebration and protest. Parades, panels, and performances uplift LGBTQ plus voices while reminding the world that the fight isn't over. Pride is also about joy, radical, unapologetic, queer joy. After centuries of hiding, erasure, and trauma, joy becomes a revolutionary act. Mental health and community care. LGBTQ plus individuals often face higher rates of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide, not because of who they are, but because of how they're treated. Rejection, isolation, and violence have deep psychological impacts. Youth without supportive families are more likely to face homelessness. Trans people, especially, face disproportionate mental health challenges. But LGBTQ plus people are also resilient. Chosen families, peer support, therapy, advocacy, and affirming spaces help nurture healing. Community care, not just self-care, is essential. Allies play a key role in creating safe environments where LGBTQ plus individuals can thrive mentally and emotionally. What it means to be an ally. Allyship is not about being perfect, it's about being present, informed, and humble. Good allies listen more than they speak. Uplift queer voices without centering themselves. Challenge homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia in their communities. Educate themselves instead of relying on LGBTQ plus people to explain everything. Respect boundaries, pronouns, and identities. Being an ally is a lifelong journey, not a one-time act. It's about standing beside, not in front of, those whose struggles you support. The future is queer and inclusive. The LGBTQ plus story is far from over. Every generation redefines what it means to be free, authentic, and loved. The future holds both promise and peril, backlash and breakthroughs. But one thing remains certain. Queer people have always existed, and they always will. Understanding LGBTQ plus identities is not just for the community, it's for everyone. Because at the heart of this conversation lies a simple truth. Every human deserves dignity, safety, and the freedom to be themselves. So whether you're exploring your own identity, showing up for a friend, or just opening your heart to new knowledge, thank you. You're helping shape a kinder, more inclusive world. LGBTQ+ includes diverse identities related to gender and sexual orientation. Understanding that the LGBTQ+ acronym includes diverse identities related to both gender and sexual orientation is the first and most vital step in building inclusive awareness. It's common to hear the term LGBTQ+ used broadly, but few people stop to unpack its meaning or appreciate the depth it carries. Each letter in the acronym stands for a distinct identity with its own history, challenges, cultural nuances, and personal experiences. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning are the core identities explicitly named, but the plus symbol, holds even greater significance. It is not just an afterthought. It is an acknowledgement of the countless other identities that exist outside of binary norms and heteronormative structures, such as asexual, pansexual, intersex, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, two-spirit, and more. These identities do not merely exist in theory or academia. They represent real people living real lives, often with a complex blend of love, gender, expression, and cultural background. To understand these identities fully, we must separate the two key dimensions they represent: gender and sexuality. Sexual orientation refers to who someone is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to. This includes people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual, among others. It's about love, desire, connection, and partnership, whether that be with someone of the same gender, a different gender, multiple genders, or no one at all. Gender identity, on the other hand, refers to a person's deeply felt understanding of their own gender, which may or may not align with the sex they were assigned at birth. This includes people who identify as transgender, non-binary, agender, or genderfluid. It's about who you are, not who you love. The diversity within the LGBTQ+ community is a reflection of the diversity within humanity itself. It resists strict binaries like male/female or straight/gay, and instead recognizes that identity can be fluid, evolving, and multifaceted. This inclusive lens invites people to explore and affirm themselves beyond the limitations of societal expectations. It is also why the plus symbol is so crucial. It leaves space for identities that may not yet have widespread recognition or language. It reminds us that identity is not fixed, that language evolves, and that people are always discovering new ways of understanding themselves. Recognizing this diversity isn't just a matter of political correctness or trend, it's a matter of respect, dignity, and humanity. When we acknowledge the full range of identities within the LGBTQ+ umbrella, we create space for people to be seen, heard, and valued for who they truly are. We also challenge the norms that have long excluded or erased those who don't fit into narrow definitions of gender or love. In this way, embracing LGBTQ+ diversity is not only about understanding others, it's also about expanding our own capacity for empathy, connection, and truth. Understanding that the LGBTQ+ acronym includes diverse identities related to both gender and sexual orientation is the first and most vital step in building inclusive awareness. It's common to hear the term LGBTQ+ used broadly, but few people stop to unpack its meaning or appreciate the depth it carries. Each letter in the acronym stands for a distinct identity with its own history, challenges, cultural nuances, and personal experiences. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning are the core identities explicitly named, but the plus symbol, holds even greater significance. It is not just an afterthought. It is an acknowledgement of the countless other identities that exist outside of binary norms and heteronormative structures, such as asexual, pansexual, intersex, non-binary, genderfluid, agender, two-spirit, and more. These identities do not merely exist in theory or academia. They represent real people living real lives, often with a complex blend of love, gender, expression, and cultural background. To understand these identities fully, we must separate the two key dimensions they represent: gender and sexuality. Sexual orientation refers to who someone is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to. This includes people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual, among others. It's about love, desire, connection, and partnership, whether that be with someone of the same gender, a different gender, multiple genders, or no one at all. Gender identity, on the other hand, refers to a person's deeply felt understanding of their own gender, which may or may not align with the sex they were assigned at birth. This includes people who identify as transgender, non-binary, agender, or genderfluid. It's about who you are, not who you love. The diversity within the LGBTQ+ community is a reflection of the diversity within humanity itself. It resists strict binaries like male/female or straight/gay, and instead recognizes that identity can be fluid, evolving, and multifaceted. This inclusive lens invites people to explore and affirm themselves beyond the limitations. The turning point in modern LGBTQ plus history came with the Stonewall Uprising of 1969, where trans women of color and other queer individuals fought back against police violence in New York City. It marked the beginning of a more visible and organized fight for rights. But even before Stonewall, people were resisting in both loud and quiet ways, in courtrooms, in protests, in art, and in love. This dual history of oppression and resilience is not just a backdrop. It explains the urgency and passion that defines the LGBTQ+ movement today. The trauma of criminalization and discrimination still lingers, but so does the courage that helped the community endure. Understanding this history helps us see why representation, legal rights, and pride matter so deeply. The fight for inclusion is not a new battle. It is the continuation of centuries of survival. Every identity within the LGBTQ+ spectrum carries this inheritance, one of being denied, but also one of never giving up. That legacy fuels both the pain and the power of the queer experience. Gender identity and sexual orientation are different, and both are valid. Building on the understanding of LGBTQ+ diversity and the history of struggle and strength, we must now clarify one of the most important distinctions in queer discourse: the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation. These two concepts are often confused, even by well-meaning allies, but they refer to entirely separate aspects of who a person is. Sexual orientation relates to whom someone is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted, whether it's people of the same gender, different genders, multiple genders, or none at all. Gender identity, on the other hand, refers to one's deeply held sense of their own gender, whether that be male, female, both, neither, or something beyond the traditional binary. It's not about attraction, it's about self. This distinction matters deeply because misunderstanding it has caused and continues to cause harm. For example, many people falsely assume that being transgender is a form of sexual orientation, when in fact, it is a matter of gender identity. A transgender person can be straight, gay, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual, just like anyone else. Likewise, a lesbian woman's sexual orientation describes whom she loves, not how she identifies in terms of gender. Without this clarity, conversations around LGBTQ+ rights, healthcare, education, and representation become muddled, and people's identities are flattened into stereotypes or misconceptions. Respecting both gender identity and sexual orientation means allowing people to define themselves without assumption. For example, a non-binary individual might be attracted to men, women, both, or neither, and that doesn't make them any less valid in their gender identity or their orientation. These aspects of identity are personal, complex, and sometimes fluid. Some people discover their orientation long before they understand their gender identity. For others, it's the reverse. Some people never feel the need to label either. All of these journeys are legitimate. Understanding the difference also helps in creating supportive environments. When schools, families, and workplaces confuse or conflate gender and orientation, it leads to exclusion, improper policies, and emotional distress. A student who comes out as trans may still face bullying because others wrongly assume their orientation. A healthcare provider might deny gender-affirming care because they don't understand the difference between gender identity and sexual preference. These aren't minor mix-ups. They are life-altering failures in respect and comprehension. But when we do recognize and affirm both aspects of identity, we create space for people to be fully seen. We dismantle the idea that there's only one normal way to live and instead embrace the reality that human beings exist in beautiful, varied forms. In doing so, we also challenge rigid binaries and societal expectations that limit everyone, not just LGBTQ+ people. Ultimately, recognizing the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation deepens our understanding of others and opens our own minds to a broader, more inclusive view of humanity.